I just want to extend to you a very, very warm welcome to the Mid Ulster's People Assembly, which has been hosted by Sinn Féin's Commission on the Future of Ireland. This event is an opportunity to explore the opportunities for Mid Ulster in the new and united Ireland. So I'm going to hand over to Lawrence now, and everybody, I really, really hope you enjoy this evening, and I'm really looking forward to it, so thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Cathal, and thank you everybody for coming. It's great to see such a massive turnout for, I suppose, which is something which is the big question of our generation. What does the future look like now for us? The question of Ireland's future isn't just about politics, it's about people, it's about livelihoods, and it's about the kind of society that we want to build. It touches on healthcare, on education, on the economy, you name it. And if reunification happens, it won't just be about a flag or a border, it'll be about the real everyday bread and butter issues that affect us all. And that's why tonight is so important. We're not here to push a particular viewpoint. We're not here to push a particular narrative. We're here to listen. We're here to challenge each other. We're particularly keen to hear from anybody who maybe doesn't share the groupthink or the view here that they think most people will have. And we're here to think seriously about what the future might look like. So with that said, we're going to start straight into it. We're going to touch a little bit on sport and community integration. So we're going to go to Tony, first of all. So Tony, do you think, Tony, that Irish unity would benefit the people of Mid Ulster?
Lawrence, maybe before I start, whenever Cora and Brian arrived with me a few weeks ago, and asked me would I join the panel tonight. Oh, I was bouncing. I says, an honour. But you know this, the closer I get to this now, and when I look around me, I think, Lawrence, I would take the chance, and I see your brother over there, I would take my chance and take him out onto the Bellaghy field there as he could have won that battle. Because Carl over there, because I mightn't won this battle tonight here with this audience. But anyway, you've asked me a question. What I would say is, I'm going to start off, and there's people on the panel, and maybe and yourself, Lawrence, will answer this maybe as much as me when I talk about the health service and the education system here in the north compared to the 26 counties. And then because as everyone knows, the medical people, the nurses, the doctors are doing their very, very, very best against the grain, but down in the 26, the health service and the education system is a lot better. I then take it into the JA that, as you said, Lawrence, I've been involved in the JA over 50 years now, and I look at the All-Ireland, the JA's All-Ireland, 32 counties. In fact, the JA is worldwide now. But it's 32 counties. You look at the rugby union, 32 counties. Ireland's flying. You look at the cricket, it's 32 counties. I would even go as far to say as the soccer. Would I not like to see the north and the south combined as one team? I think it would give us a better chance of winning, maybe, and definitely would have a stronger team. So, yes, a fresh start is required. A new Ireland is required.
And you say, I mean, you talk about how things are at the moment, Tony. When you look forward to the future, how do you see the future panning out? What would you like the future to look like? What would it be?
The first thing, every human being, no matter what background, no matter what religion, no matter what colour, no matter what creed, that everybody is treated with total respect. That's the least I would like to see, that everybody is treated with total respect. I'll go back to the time I was growing up. And as I say, going to the GA grounds, it just wasn't the same as now. Unfortunately, it was not. I was just laughing to myself here. I was maybe one of the first ones here tonight. But that was another thing that I got maybe from years gone by. Because when I was going to County Thinning, not so club, because the club was just 4 miles from our house, Ballinascreen and Columns. But when I was going to County Thinning, I always would have left a bit earlier. And there's a reason for that. Because if you were stopped, there was a chance you had been pulled in because you'd have a J bag or hurl in the back of the car. Now, that's the way it was. No, yes. A lot more people were treated a lot worse than I was, but it wasn't. It's not normal, that, and we don't want that in our society.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned the GAA, Tony, and you're obviously, really heavily involved and have been your entire life. Do you think the GAA has a role in pushing for Irish unity?
Yes, it has. I would say there's definitely yes, there's room for it to push for Irish unity. Absolutely. Sure, if you look in recent times at so many past players at all our codes, football, hurling, camogie, and ladies football, they've all been they've been all speaking up for Irish unity. And when you get the vast majority of people and GA people speaking up, I think something has to be done. You know what I mean? So people are, and the GA people are wanting it, absolutely, on the ground.
I suppose, Jarlath Burns, obviously the new GAA president, he's been much more vocal than previous presidents have been with regards to this. And I suppose he has a track record himself of kind of outreach. When he was a principal in his school, he very kind of obviously reached out to the Orange Order, to the PSNI at the time as well. Do you think, though, we obviously have a view of the GAA ourselves, and we view it in one perspective, but it's very clear that in the north here that unionists view it in a completely different way. Is there a concern that if the GAA get involved in the debate, that actually it could hamper the push for unity?
I don't think so, Lawrence. Absolutely don't think so. I've been working. It's my full-time job. This last over 30 years now. I was with the Derry County Board for 10 or 11 years, going around coaching hurling and football in the schools and the camogie and ladies football. And over the last maybe 22 years now, I've been with the Ulster GAA. And some of the projects we do, for example, and I'm sure a lot of people don't realise this, our starship is of a programme, the Q Hollands Cup, and it's played annually, and it's run out the finals day, or the game is run out in the Meadowbank Sports Arena in Magherafelt. But all the number of staff, the Ulster GAA, will go around different towns in the north here, and 3 or 4 schools would come together. The Protestant, the Catholic, the integrated schools, primary schools, the secondary schools would come together. It's for 4th and 5th years. And they'll come together, and we'd be coaching them Gaelic football. Also, this hurling and camogie has been started this last few years. So the people want it. I think the children growing up now, it's a different era. And as I say, we also have staff who goes in to the schools and tells them all about the GAA, where it started at, before the coaching programme starts with us. And as I said, it finishes with a Blitz Day in Meadowbank, Magherafelt. That's going now 15 or 16 years. And as I said, we have all religions taking part in it. Also, we have a game of 3 halves. Football, soccer, rugby, and Gaelic comes together for a few days with primary schools from all across the north coming. Integrated schools, Protestant and Celtic schools coming to take part in all the game of 3 halves. There's also the celebration of sport. Primary school children come together. A number of us goes and coaches the children in the central venue. And again, that's from all the primary schools. So there's there's lots of stuff happening, and the schools controlled, maintained. They all want to be involved in, so they all want sport. They all want sport. When I was growing up myself, Lawrence, I just wanted to play sport. I'd been playing soccer in the pub league level. I'd been playing a wee bit of rugby in school. Darts, snooker. Kids just love to play sport.
Yeah, I mean, within that, you talked a little bit earlier on about your kind of views for the future. Your hopes for the future would be that no matter what kind of colour or creed or race you were, that you were respected. And we've, it's obvious from what you say that we've moved on an awful lot over the years. I suppose my question to you then was, if the future is where we respect everybody, in a united Ireland, what would we need to do to ensure that that is the case? How do we actually practically do that for people?
That's a great question. That is a great question. I just feel we have to still, go out and encourage people to be involved. To be involved in sport. We're no different from everybody else, Lawrence. So I don't think they should have nothing to be feared of. And the GAA is doing their best to reach out. So I don't understand the stumbling blocks at times.
Seamus, when we were chatting earlier on in the green room, you had mentioned that you had done a wee bit of work with the GAA and community outreach as well. Tell us a wee bit about that.
Yeah, well, I was through my own club in Swatter, and I was in the committee for maybe 15 years. But after the Good Friday Agreement, there was a big effort. Then we were asked to get involved across community, and we had met with the Freemasons and the Orange Order and third organisation, and we had to explain to them about the GAA, because they just thought this GAA was an awful political organisation, and then they explained to us about the way the Freemasons was formed, and we asked them, was it to buy land to keep the Catholics out, and he didn't deny it, but they was at an Orange Order, would have supported people of their husbands that had died, and that was interesting, and at least it showed them that we weren't a sectarian organisation, and I think it was it was all over the north that project was run, and we found it interesting enough, and as I say, it was unbelievable. The beliefs they had of the GAA,
And with that kind of perspective that you now have, and seeing, I suppose, have a little bit more insight into how we are viewed. What would your answer to the question, should the GAA weigh in here? Would it be the same as Tony's? Do you think it should?
Oh, definitely, yes.
Yeah?
Yes, yeah. And the GAA has done a great job to show that we're not a bigoted organisation, and I know that there's a bit to go yet, but no, we've come a long way since the Good Friday Agreement to selling them as not a one-sided community. But as I say, it was unbelievable, the perception they had of it at that time. And I suppose it was RUC was going to say the PNSI was the other organisation. They were making a big effort to get in around all GA clubs or community policing, and I suppose that's come a long way since that too. And I have to say, maybe everybody, including myself, it just wasn't on for it at the time, but it's progress, definitely, since that, all right. And as I say, the GA should be definitely involved in the talk for the New Ireland.
Yeah. So I suppose maybe before we move on to different kind of themes and different topics, I want to say that we want audience participation. If there's anything that you think kind of triggers something, or you want to chat about something, or you want to ask a question, jot it down and put your hand up. Rhiannon is going to try and at some stage work her way around the room, and we'll try and get questions from the floor as well. So we're going to move on to a slightly different topic, and I suppose in many ways a different perspective to one that maybe we all haven't considered before. Ola, I'm going to speak to you specifically now about, you moved to Magherafelt in 2001, you've made Northern Ireland your home, you're married to a Paddy called Paddy. Yeah. And I suppose for many of us, we maybe haven't really taken the time to consider your perspective in all of this. First of all, I know that Brexit had a kind of massive impact on you and your ability to kind of live here and you know, EU citizens staying in Northern Ireland. How did that impact on you?
Yes, when I arrived, Poland actually wasn't in the European Union yet, so sort of remember those times of restrictions and not being able to move freely. And then when Poland joined the EU, it was just really sort of the being afforded to all those rights that other member states had for years, and that also brought a wave of migration to Northern Ireland. So I was here, kind of one of the Polish girl in Macrofeld for a couple of years, and it was absolutely lovely, a lovely experience of hospitality and being kind of welcome to the community. And then with a bigger wave of migration, it changed a little bit because there were bigger groups and people not knowing, and it was a very new phenomenon. And then I think Europeans kind of integrated pretty well, and the contributions to economy and to the social life were quite apparent to especially here locally. And then Brexit was really like the carpet was pulled out from our feet, because suddenly neighbors were asking, you know, are you gonna have to go home? The talk of deportations and immigration became sort of really allowed to enter the discourse of everyday conversations. And my children, who are born here and for whom English is a first language, they were sort of, you know, they had to answer questions, and it really impacted people on a very emotional level. And I know in Northern Ireland people actually did not vote, you know, on the whole to leave, but it was not having a say in that debate and not having not being consulted was really was one of the main kind of the sore points of the whole thing. But that maybe is of concern to people born and raised here. But yes, yeah, the EU citizens or migrants in general have a vote in the local election and an assembly election, but not in the general election, not in referenda. So that is something that is really close to my heart and to our community's heart. And also has on the flip side of the coin, we are a big voting power, so that's something also to consider in those. 180,000. I can really know the stats. About 8%, I think, of the population hails from a migrant background, according to the last census statistics. And for EU citizens, since the EU settlement scheme was introduced, whereas we had to kind of register to be allowed to stay here. 130,000 applications were made in Northern Ireland alone, and some of those were repeat applications. Some of them, some people have left, some were kind of rejected and refused. But 100,000 people is that's a big group. So that's a big group to neglect and to overlook in a big change.
You mentioned, I suppose, feeling disenfranchised about not being able to kind of vote for it, and you were thinking about the impact that you know, the debate would have, or the choice would have.
Yeah.
You know, what impact would unification have for you?
There's a lot of unknowns, I suppose. So just on the one big advantage would be being back in Europe. I suppose that's being kind of that border of the European Union moving again for us. That would be something that would have positive impact for freedom of movement, for kind of being able to travel freely, and for family reunification. But there are a lot of those pragmatic things. Like, I'm not sure whether I personally would be ready to ditch the pound and embrace the euro. So that is of course a big concern for migrants, many of whom come here, you know, are economic migrants. So that is a big concern, and those pragmatic issues are definitely on our mind in terms of education, access to healthcare, access to services. In the south of Ireland, the migration policies are not super friendly at the moment. I think more than anything we would need more information and have some sort of impact assessment, seeing how we would be affected, because we would still be migrants no matter where, whether it's which jurisdiction it is, we would still be blow-ins. We never stop being a blow-in in this part of the world. So, yeah.
Have you people who move 5 miles to Bellaghy and they're still known as the blow-ins?
That's true.
You're with the organisation, the 3 Million, and you advocate for EU citizens as well. I mean, I would imagine you have a fairly good idea, or your finger on the pulse, as to if it came to a debate and a vote on unity, which side of the fence, the larger proportion would come. Do you have a kind of gist as to or are they not set yet? Do they not have an idea yet?
I would not kind of even pretend to have an idea how people think about that and how they would vote, mostly because they don't have enough information and because they've never been asked or engaged on that topic. So I think it is really, really important to have that grassroots engagement, and Michelle mentioned the grassroots engagements for every person to feel at home, and so that the island of Ireland is really a home for everyone, no matter their creed. So I think specific engagement with migrant groups and EU citizens would be really, really beneficial.
So there's work to be done
There's work to be done. I think many people, I'm Polish, so Polish people are one of the biggest migrant groups here. So on the sort of ideological and emotional level, I can very much relate to the idea of Irish unity. Poland has been sort of really struggling for independence for centuries, and that drive has always been there. But the pragmatic nitty-gritty issues are important. So I would kind of reserve my vote and my judgment until I know.
The reason I suppose I asked the question about why or whether you would have an idea as to how the majority of the bloc would vote is that, if we were pushing for you to have the right to vote, the concern would be, I suppose, if it's largely voting one way or the other, that there would be political resistance to allowing you to have the vote. That would be the concern.
Well, that's true, but on the other hand, knowing which way we would vote and not allowing us to vote would have exactly the same effect. So the residence-based voting has place in Wales, in Scotland, and it works really well there. So anybody who's lawfully resident can vote in all of the elections. So that encourages people to participate more and in democratic processes and kind of feel even more at home. And the more people feel at home in the north, the more they will be aligned with the local way of thinking and the local politics. But the key, I think, is to engagement. And this is my complete guess that at the moment many people do not have an opinion of it, because it seems a bit of an abstract concept. Yes, it is in the media, it is in the press, but what people are mostly concerned with is sort of the bread and butter kind of daily things. So. The university fees, how that would work, what's the admission criteria, what access to housing, access to services, and representation. So that's.
I guess when we look at Northern Ireland, there's obviously the two ends of the spectrum where they have their minds made up already, and if the vote was in the morning, they know exactly what they're doing. But there's this kind of group in the middle, and for them, it's about the bread and butter issues. It's about what does health look like, what does what does education look like. So I suppose you've fit that kind of bracket the same as a lot of us.
Yeah, yes, absolutely, and it is always the middle group that decides the vote, right? So that's where the work really is, and it's also the issue of nationality and citizenship, of the birthright, and how that would work for migrant groups in the future. And the one thing I think that Brexit taught all of us is that the grass is greener on the other side always. So this is something to be very, very mindful of and very, very careful. And I think good information and engagement is the key to address that.
Okay, we're going to pause there and ask, has anybody got any questions? Does anybody want to put their hand up? Who's going to break the ice? Who's going to be the first person? We'll play on with another theme if we want. Okay, so we'll... Yes, of course, yes.
It's not so much ask a question, but thank you. My name's Bridie McElhill. I've been on a number of these events. I live in Donaghadee. I'm interested in your demographic, and I also would say that the disability group is also an important group in terms of the percentage numbers in Northern Ireland. I am one of the ones who are in the middle, the 20%. You talk about the two 40% and the 20%, and I'm one of them. And it's not bread and butter issues that will determine, or will not so much determine as influence what way I will vote in the event of a referendum. And I live in Donaghadee, and I'm very much a minority in terms of my religion. And I'm probably the only Bridie that's in the town. And I have a lot of non-Catholic friends. And I swim, I do open water swimming, and I swim every day, and the majority of people that are in that group are not Catholics. And I remember when I first joined that group, and it was before COVID, and for a long time, I think they were kind of suspicious of me. The great thing about having a Catholic name is that you find out straight off. You can read people's non-verbal reactions no matter what they're saying. You can read, oh, like this here, And so I'm well used to that, and it doesn't bother me. But it took me a long time to gain their trust. I had no issues with them, but they had an issue with me just by virtue of what I represented. Mm-hmm. And now we're great friends, mm-hmm. I have a place in Donegal, and this year we went on a swim weekend. Mm-hmm. I will be getting to the point here. We went on a swim weekend. There were 6 of us, and we did nothing but swim in Carrickfinn and all around West Donegal. And it came to my attention that at least one of the group, there's 6 of us, one of the group had never been to the south. And the other person, it was their first time in Donegal. And I was very perplexed about this, And then I realised when I thought about it that a lot of the people I know are connected historically with services, police service and things like that. And we have talked, when Brexit happened, we talked in depth about, what this meant. And I really started to appreciate and understand, that they don't really, they feel very vulnerable. Vulnerable as to what's going to happen to them as unionists. What will they kind of, now they're kind of in this situation and have perspective that is not familiar to them, having come from a position of dominance, and now there's something that's a little bit more shaky, and therefore their instinct is to resist what is happening, and to become defensive and to go on the attack about it. And I think we have to understand that if we want to try and bring part of that, those soft kind of unionists along with us. and to try and actually start speaking to their culture and their way of thinking, to at least...
You've thought about this obviously in a fair degree of depth. How do we do that? I mean, you talk about reassuring them and bringing them with us. You've thought about this. How do we actually practically do that?
Well, I think the hard thing really is, like this gentleman, Mr. Scullion, when he talked about the grassroots, what's going on in schools and all that there, I thought that was brilliant. You know, I that's perfect. But that takes a long time to filter through, you know, to people actually, and it is very much that individual contact that you have.
I suppose that kind of bears out in the demographics, in that when you look at the polls for the younger age groups, you know, they seem to be much more open to the debate, you know, on unity, and seem to be much more likely to vote for it if it came to it. And that probably is through a lot of that work that is going on. It's that familiarity. It's the fact that we are now much more integrated probably as a society than we were for the 60, 70, 80-year-olds, you know.
Lawrence, can I reply to Brady there?
Yeah,
Can I just add another point there? That's a great point, Brady, because I'll tell you, see, when we started that Q Hullins programme 15 years ago, 10 years ago, 9 years ago, the schools turned us away at the gate. But now, them schools are taking us in. So I do think, you know, the young ones today want a better for themselves, and they see that this is a way to go, really do. And as I say, we don't have. I'm in all the prisons in the north too. I'm in the prisons in the north, McGabry, McGilligan, Hydebank, and the Youth Justice Centre in Bangor. I've been in a few times, but I get all religions out to me doing Gaelic football in McGabry and also McGilligan. So, and they love it. Mm-hmm. And after the hour and a half session, they come and they shake my hand, Tony, can't wait till we get you on, you're back on next week again. They love it. And I think we are definitely breaking borders.
Yeah, we're making progress. Any other questions? Anybody else want to come in at this stage before we move on? Sorry. Yes, this gentleman here.
I'm the exact opposite to you, but I'm in the 20%, and I'm blessed to have been brought up in a community where I was very much in the minority, blessed by good parents. Now, Tony, you're talking about the GAA. I couldn't say that I was on the GAA pitch when I went to school, but we were told we were playing rugby football. We were playing rugby with a ball, and that was happening in the 70s. The great thing about that is that has stood to me all my life, because I had friends bringing me into Gaelic grounds on a Saturday, never went on a Sunday. We were brought in there, we felt part of the community. My school bus was a big bus that had 5 of us going to the one school. And I don't like talking religion. We were never once sectarian abuse. Our Gaelic friends stuck up for us because we hated Devonish, they hated Derrygonley. And that was our derby. And that's me being brought up in a Church of Ireland community. And I have always felt the youth are the future. We've had our past and we've screwed it up, but the youth are our future, and we need to ingrain into youth. I did a project when I was in radio in South Derry, and let's say one school would have been regarded as staunch loyalist and the other Republican. And the principals of the 2 schools, and this is back in the 90s, we did a thing in P7 where we were doing information through communication, where I went in and set up radio studios. Each school did birthdays, marriages and businesses. So the principal of the 2 schools sent it at that time to the education minister, and he didn't even warrant a reply with a letter, which I think was absolutely disgraceful and totally contemptible of the work that those 2 principals were doing, and myself did in the community. what came out of the whole project was kids are kids. They kick a ball, they speak to each other. And if you ingrain that into society, we'll go forward. And who cares whether it's United Ireland or not? That's what it's all about. People mixing with each other. Sorry, I'll say no more. Thank you.
That's good, thank you. Well, maybe if that's us, we'll move on maybe to a different theme. Seamus, I'm going to ask you just a few questions about farming and about kind of rural economy and things. You're obviously a farmer from Swatra.
Yeah.
We've had a few, I suppose, burning issues recently about things like inheritance tax, and we spoke earlier on about TB and different things. How would Irish Unity affect farmers locally?
Well, I'm involved in the cattle trade for 50 years, and I've been watching the cross-border trade. Like, for example, a very large percentage of all the lamb produced in Northern Ireland and most of the milk goes south for processing. And can you imagine what bother we have of sending a cow or to an abattoir or the market? Can you imagine the amount of money that's spent within them dairy and processing organisations with administering for that cross-border trade at the minute? And then this Brexit business has even made it worse. If that expense was passed on to the farmer, and the beef, before anybody comes from the audience, like in the case of beef cattle, the beef's worth a lot more in the north than at the south at the present. But that certainly wasn't always the case. For years and years, we've watched the south having access to live shipping, and that wasn't available. That live shipping has been very active this last 3 years, and this big increase in cattle at the minute, the live shipping is attributed to that, and that was something that we weren't open to. Now, there are an awful lot of cattle left to Ireland, in the south of Ireland there, and that's left a scarcity. Where the northern cattle, northern beef and southern beef goes to the same market. Most of it, 80 or 90% of it, goes to the British market, and that can change. And that probably had come a bit of an issue there with Brexit, because the supermarket shelves has nearly been empty, and now before Brexit, Boris was going to plant the whole of the UK in trees, but now that's changed, and it's become a bit of an issue of us self-sufficient, but that could change too. But this Brexit business, like, could you imagine if you're running a business and made a decision to exclude half your customers? Like, Brexit ruled out between 600 and 700 million customers for agricultural products. I mean, we're affiliated with the UK, which is an industrial nation, and we're a very small country, so we would need to be in with the South Ireland, the 26 counties market, and our stock and milk and lamb. And
so the EU obviously will be a bigger market.
Bigger market, surely. As I say, it's the UK is flying now, all right, and buying our beef. But
having said that, though, Seamus, I mean, so much of our exports are agri-foods exports at the minute still go across to the UK.
Yeah.
And I know people, we talk about the Windsor framework. Could you foresee a stage at some stage where, if there was Irish unity, that actually we would have some form of an agreement whereby we would still have access to the UK market in the 6 counties?
Well, the UK needs us. We produce a wild lot more than we consume. So, but if you're running any business, it's a very bad job to be dependent on one market. That Irish, both north and south, is very dependent on the UK market. That's not a good way to be. Because I can tell you, we're trying to market our pedigree stock, and they just simply don't want us for the pedigree stock. They want us for the beef, and everything is a good trade now going into the EU. That's because of the British or the Europeans is not sending them stock, or they don't want to bother with all the paperwork. That may change, or probably will change under the Labour government, because they're going to make changes. But with them, we're going to relax that veterinary, whatever the technical term of it was. But what was your question? Guy envisaged us not needing Europe as much.
Well, so much of our exports as things stand at the moment, and I'm thinking as well, so many of our farmers are unionist landowners and farmers. You know, the Ulster Farmers Union, by and large, historically would have been, kind of leaning in that direction. I suppose even ideologically for them, it would be important that they have open access still to the UK and Irish unity. Is there any circumstances where you could see almost like a Windsor framework in reverse, where we're part of a united Ireland, but the 6 counties still has some sort of access to UK markets. Is that something that you think would be important to farmers?
Very important, yes. But I mean, also important, as I say, you're running any business, it's very important not to have all your eggs in one basket. And we have a lot of eggs in that UK basket in the minute. So if we had access, like, for example, we don't have much marketing power because I was in Brazil selling semen, and they were talking about where we're from in Northern Ireland, and one of the customers said, "Sure, we have farms half the size of your country, you know, so we don't have much marketing power on that." And then I was in China also, and not China, India, selling semen, and they said, one customer said he had a nephew living in a housing estate in Birmingham, and should the housing estate, he even named the name, but I don't remember it. He said it had the same population of people. I checked that out since. A housing estate in Birmingham is the same population as Northern Ireland. So that gives you the size of marketing power we have, and that's how we're perceived. So we need to be marketing on an all-Ireland basis. And then that's before we even start talking about health of the cattle, the TB, you know, and we have an organisation up here trying to stop it, and an organisation down there trying to stop it, and the biggest spread is wildlife, and the wildlife doesn't really recognise borders, you know, and like there are millions been spent on it. If that was pulled together, and then that's before we start talking about the pollution, like we need Europe to help us sort out our Loch Ness problem, and if we were approaching Europe from a 32 county, would have a far better case, and to be dependent on the UK or the British government, or successive governments there have neglected us, and I think at the minute we would all agree they're nearly trying to starve us out. And then that brings us into the inheritance thing. Like, look what they've done there. Rachel from accounts has. Her and her friends, the closest they maybe have ever got to farming is watching Emmerdale. I would have thought, like, all right, there's a case for inheritance tax. I would say what they were thinking of, the big conservative voters in England, they have thousands of acres, and people, them big organisations tying up money on land. All right, they would need to pay inheritance tax. But she's so far from removed from the average farming in Northern Ireland, like,
so she thought she was hitting the Jeremy Clarksons who bought it as a tax break, you know, but in actual fact she's kind of caught everybody up in the crossfire. She's
caught everybody in the crossfire. Like it would have been, that shows you how far she moved to us. Like, first of all, Northern Ireland's very far down a British politician's list, and farming is very far down their list. So when you're a farmer from Northern Ireland, you're maybe not on the list. I don't know where you are, you're way below the Wondrush people, I would think. But it's just we feel so helpless, and anybody I'd be dealing with, like, as well as being farming and business, anybody we'd be dealing with, it's just, you feel so helpless that you have nobody representing us, really. The Farmers Union, all right, but sure.
So on that, I mean, on the kind of inheritance tax, am I right in saying that down south you get 90% tax relief on inheritance tax for farmland? Is that
at
right?
the minute?
Aye. And that's a better system for you guys?
Well, them active farmers, yeah, it's effectively zero, you know.
Right, okay.
And all right, now I wouldn't be in total agreement with people bogging money into land to avoid inheritance tax, and that's what was happening, and keeping the bottom in the price of land. But it has a bigger issue in England with them big estates and people, investment houses buying land to hand it over to the next generation. I suppose she was trying to target that.
Yeah.
But
I suppose going back to what you kind of originally talked about as well, is a lot of it was really just about joined up thinking. You know, when you talked about TB and having two kind of distinct approaches, north and south, and that actually there's definite gains to be made if we can think as one and do as one. And certainly things like Loch Ness would be one of them, but TB would be others.
Yeah.
But there has to be countless other things that would be better if we could join
countless other things, yeah. Like, as I say, that the processing, there's very strong outfits in the south processing and selling beef. Like, we need direct access to that, and that wasn't happening down the years. And that live shipping was a big example. I would attribute the good trade of the cattle at the minute. There's so many leaving the country, and we had no access to that other than a few calves under 6 weeks old, you know. And it was very frustrating to watch it this last. I'm not talking this last 2 or 3. I'm talking this last 40 years. You know, all right that beef's a wee bit dear at the moment. That wasn't the case, and it may not be the case in a few years' time if the EU things relaxed.
So we're in the heart of Mid Ulster, we're in Bellaghy here, we're bound to have some farmers in the audience that have an opinion or a view on this. Does anybody want to ask a question or make a comment?
Hello, I'm a farmer myself, and from my previous generation, been farming. I know farmers in Minot is all against the inheritance tax, and I believe the farmers should be supported. And I believe the dairy farmers should be supported because the dairy farmers are still struggling at the minute on the price of the milk we're getting. And I think the dairy farmers should be kept supported with a subsidy, and the people don't mind paying extra 10 or 15p a litre more for the milk in the shop if it goes to the farmer to support them. As well as that, the inheritance tax, the farm's been passed for 5 or 6 generations as I look, and I think there's no young ones want to go into farming and into agriculture at the minute. Because they all want to go into all jobs in construction and engineering and stuff like that, that pays good wages and get up in the morning and go to work and have a wage. And I think agriculture needs to be supported, because if you don't support agriculture, well, a lot of oil business is going to go down altogether.
Yeah, you mentioned there just briefly kind of subsidies. You mentioned subsidies.
Yeah.
That you were getting. I mean, obviously, Brexit affected your access to the CAP. How did that impact on farming?
It has impacted, because my subsidy was down this year to last year. And everything else has nearly got a bit more expensive to buy. Even on the housewife going to the shop to buy the groceries alone there has got an extra 15 or 20 pound a week more. As well as I think the inheritance tax needs to be nipped in the bud now, not let them get to start on it, and support young farmers to come up in agriculture.
So, I mean, obviously, if Irish unity were to kind of happen, the hope would be obviously that you would get access to the common agriculture, to CAP again. Would that be of benefit? Is that a better system than the one in the British?
The cap's gone. You know, common agriculture policy was replaced with all these green ones, and all right. The British government promises that we would receive no less than what we had in the final year, but it's been all revamped. One example is the suckler premiums coming back, and it's going to be £100. I think it was 280 30 years ago. That would give you some idea how much good that's going to be. And this 350 million that was written aside of the bus that we were going to all get a share of, that didn't really materialise. But
so if Northern Ireland, if we rejoined the European Union,
well, take for example how the South's getting on there. There was an article in the Farmers Union or the Farmers Journal there a few weeks ago. It's unreal amount of more the average farmer down there. They have a lot of wee different schemes, about 10 different schemes that they can apply to, but it's caught us a lot more. And this gentleman has mentioned there are a lot more young people involved in farming in the south than there is in the north, and the dairy man wasn't too well supported with subsidy. I suppose that changed a wee bit there with the payments on the acre, but traditionally he didn't get much support from the subsidies. It was usually the sheep and the cows got it. But the new schemes is going to be all environmentally related, but again, it's small compared to the south.
okay.
Well, before I go here, there's no problem with farming too. I have an outline farm, and a lot of people knows I have a situation. I can't even put my cattle on it because every time I put my cattle on it, we come back a TB. And already 5 or 6 neighbouring farmers in that town down the Bancroft have stopped farming, stopped keeping cattle.
Yeah.
And what some farmers are doing now, instead of someone farming it, they're cutting it for silage and selling it to beef and suckling farmers, because some beef and suckling farmers don't have enough silage produced over winter.
Yeah, well, that TB thing is a big problem. But
It is a
the
big
one
problem.
example where the advantage should be, there was a contract put out in the south for the culling and vaccinating the badgers, and that I think the price, average price was £750 per badger, and the estimation then for the department in the north was 5,000 a badger. So we may do the maths. So combining our efforts, like, it has to be more economical, and how there need joined up thinking on that TB, and that is a big issue now.
Anybody else want to make a point or ask a question about this lady just up with a few? We'll take 2 or 3 at a time, and then we'll kind of put them to the panel.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that there's not much point in thinking about joined up thinking about, benefiting more from the, benefits in the south in relation to agriculture or any of the other industries, when there's so much corruption in the south at the moment that, I don't know if you've been following the story about VAT fraud with processors in, chicken farming, and like loads and loads of corruption. VAT fraud that government know about, that judges know about, that our judiciary, there's no separation of powers in the south. So it's wishful thinking, Seamus, that you could benefit more from the south, but not until we deal with the issues of corruption in the south can our families be together, north and south. So I just thought I'd just open that to the floor as well, that it may be something that you might consider.
It's a really valuable contribution. I suppose it goes back to what Ola said originally, where there's always this perception that the grass is always greener on the other side, and we all know, I suppose, that nowhere is perfect. We have somebody up here as well.
Hi, I'm Mark. I'm from an engineering background, and we talked a bit about the farming industry there, and I think I just wanted to make, a general point that really, as part of the discussion in the economy, all of our key industries need to be considered, and the debate for one industry may be different for another. So as an example, I work in aerospace. It's a really key industry here in the north. A lot of our biggest exporters, manufacturers are in aerospace, but it's an industry that's probably more linked to the UK traditionally. It's a global industry, but it's, all our research funding streams are mainly UK based. So I think it's important that, how our key industries in the north that may be slightly different to those in the south, how are they going to fit in? So if we move to United Ireland, that we have a strong, balanced economy that's strong for everybody on the island. And maybe the second point is that when we think about the economy, maybe we're always thinking about facts and figures and numbers, and are we better off in our own pockets? But there's maybe a softer side to the economy and hearts and minds. Again, the likes of engineering, aerospace is maybe more traditionally thought of as a unionist-dominated industry. I don't think that's necessarily true, but maybe a lot of people have that thinking in their head. And it's how do we, convince those people that move into United Ireland, those kind of industries are going to be protected. Probably very soon here we're going to have a big footprint from Airbus in the north. The likes of Harlan Wolff being bought over by Navantia, a Spanish company. So we've two, big European companies now coming into the north. So it's kind of maybe, I think that debate around the economy has to be a hearts and minds debate as well.
So yeah, I mean, I suppose it impacts on all industries, I suppose, is what you're saying, and there are some that are more emotive than others. Yeah, if it's okay, we're maybe going to move on to the next theme, which is education. Siobhan's been sitting patiently waiting to go. No pressure, Siobhan, but my wife is a teacher and she's sitting up there taking notes.
Okay, thanks, Lawrence.
So Siobhan, you work for INTO, which is a cross-border organisation, so you have a very good insight into, I suppose, education north and south. What are the burning issues? With regards to this debate, what are the big topics?
where to start. I also teach as well as doing my INTO work as well, so I'm double or treble jobbing, and I don't know where to. Tonight I came from a meeting in Ballymena. There were 70 teachers in the room. We're doing these roadshows because, as you know, in the media that teachers actually didn't accept the pay deal. We were offered 5.5%. We are the lowest paid teacher in the UK. Right across the board, it's workload, it's pay, it's conditions, and we feel as if every time we're going with a begging bowl, trying to get money out of Westminster, we're just treated like, how can you ask somebody who is teaching Mahara to be paid less than a teacher in Manchester? Is that not telling us we're second, third class citizens? We're an All-Ireland Teachers Union. At the minute, we're looking at teacher mobility across North and South. I've assisted people registering with the Teaching Council in the South. And I had a phone call, my husband's up there, and I'll tell you, the other Friday night, and this lady started and spent half an hour telling me how wonderful it is. She said, the grass is not greener, it's greener than ever I could imagine. The pay is better. For me personally, I'd be probably earning £25,000 more if I was teaching in the South. I'd work a month less. The outcomes are far, far better at the minute. Statistically, there are more in third level education in the South than they are in the North. We have an education system here which is very divisive. It's divisive in every way. A child at age 11 is actually sent to a different school because of one test. In the South, that doesn't happen. You know, we can't actually, you're talking about hearts and minds. When you tell a child at age 11 with the system we have, we had education ministers here who turned that on their heels, and then people actually felt that they wanted to keep the norm.
So I just want to kind of interject there. So on that, the South is a non-selective secondary schools, isn't that right?
Yeah.
So there is no academic selection at 11.
People have a right to choose in school systems there. So if you're selecting a certain school, there would be administration fees to go into it. But in the norm, most people would go. And there's actually evidence here, Bain and Costello, that these really detailed reports about you going to near school. I went to school in Mahara. I've never moved out of Mahara, very seldom. And the reality is we have here a great system in South Derry of an all-ability, a comprehensive school. It's produced people like yourself. You couldn't ask for it. I know, when you see that come along and to have that all-inclusive, and I think that is actually going to be a change. Change in the education system is going to be needed. We have here a system which is broken. It's underfunded. It's like a health service. We're the poor relation when you're trying to get funding. We have children in schools which very needs. They should be actually allocated a place in a special school. They're going into these special classes called SPIMS. They keep changing the term. They don't fund them properly, and they don't care because they're here in the north of Ireland. We're somebody else's problem, and the UK is just actually squeezing the heart out of education. If you look at the CCMS website, you look at any sort of platform at the minute, people are crying out for teachers. And I know at the end of the day, the guy who looks after cover in our place cannot get people. People are moving. There is that teacher mobility. There are people who are going to Australia. You're earning twice that in Australia. You're going to Qatar, Dubai, everywhere else.
You were mentioning earlier then as well, there's a hemorrhaging of teachers to the south, obviously, yes, because the pay and conditions are better. Just back to, I suppose, the academic selection. We did try and academic selection here, but we found that across the board, in both yes, unionist and nationalist parts of the society, that there was resistance to that. There seems to be a hugely emotional attachment to the grammar stream. I just want to, just by show of hands, if we were to move to a United Ireland or a New Ireland, hands up if you would like the grammar stream to stay. Hands up if you'd be quite happy to move to a non-selective. Okay, I mean that's interesting. I declaration of I actually am a product of St Pat's and Mahara, which is a comprehensive school. So I actually thought that would have been weighted slightly differently. I actually thought there would have been more emotional attachment to the grammar stream. So that's interesting. One other thing, I suppose, it's a little bit niche, Siobhan, but it's probably an important thing because it goes to culture and identity, and that's the teaching of history in schools. And obviously in the south, they very much teach Irish history. In the north, our curriculum is very much based on British history. And that potentially could be something that could be a bit of a stumbling block, or something that would need at least to be discussed. In a future or a new Ireland, if there was unity, how would you see that one kind of panning out? Would there have to be some sort of a provision whereby schools could choose which curriculum they taught, or would there have to be a unified curriculum with regards to that?
One of the things that's quite interesting, I was speaking to our Year 12 today in school about their history, and I was asking them just basically what the topics are. The topics are very different from what I expected them to be, and they didn't have the same interest in Irish history that maybe I would have had as a teenager growing up, because it was something maybe we weren't supposed to be doing, and it was like maybe a more dangerous topic. They were talking about Bin Laden and about 9/11, and they were more excited about that. And I says, well, what about the Irish history? And that was last year. And it was not the same excitement. So our children are very different. Our children don't see the barriers. We go across quite regularly in Cookstown, over to Cookstown High School, and do shared education projects. I've actually taken a group of children from our school and from Cookstown High School up to the Assembly Building. I think Emma was one of the people. There was a few people did a meet and greet last year. Children don't see the barriers. The children actually, we the adults are creating the barriers. They don't see it. They actually have to say, it doesn't matter to them. They're happy enough. When we did careers events and we had and talking about where they're going to work, the sports that they play, they talk about it openly. The GA bag can come in. It doesn't meet with the same resistance as it would have met when we were at school. And I remember going to university, and a naive poor critter from the country, off she went, staying over in Eglinton Avenue and going to study in St Mary's in Falls Road. Didn't realise Tate's Avenue was somewhere that we shouldn't have been hop-skipping over, until poor Farah Callan explained to us that we should be going using taxis, and we shouldn't be walking across there, and probably had some element of identity. I have to say, we were very naive when I look back on it, but thankfully we all did survive.
One of the things you spoke about earlier on, whenever we were in the green room earlier, Siobhan, was obviously with your work at the union, you have a very kind of real perspective on how the unions are treated differently, north and south as well. Talk a wee bit about that, and what is the difference?
I think you just have to look at the media at the minute, to just the idea that we are turned around. They actually suggestion, even in a recent pay deal, that they would try and establish industrial peace. People were afraid that it was taking away their right to strike. In England, the legislation there is trying to crush the trade union. There was a lady, I don't know, she was Maggie something or other around a number of years ago, and she actually tried to sample trade unions. And I always quote, her legacy lives on, because more and more I go out and speak to people and they say, oh, I wouldn't want to say that, I wouldn't ask. But she's crushed, even though she's long gone. But what she did do was try and stamp upon it. Whereas when we're in negotiations, and our union does negotiations with the governments in the south, and they have no problem, they're equal, they're there to represent all workers, and people aren't be afraid to be a member of a trade union. Here, it's like a dirty word. At times, people will come up, and I've seen it even in staff rooms. People say, I'll talk to you after. They don't want to scene with the rebel rouser, the person that's going to create the problems. But at the end of the day, it's about improving everybody's working conditions, and that doesn't matter to me. It's improving everybody in the school. Everybody should be a member, being allowed to have collective bargaining. Because as I explained to people quite recently when they were angry, it's like there are, 19,000 teachers registered. Could you imagine negotiating your own pay deal? And this is what's happening in workforces. people are trying to negotiate their own terms and conditions, and at least with unions and having the right to collective bargaining.
And would you then would you at any stage have come and go with representatives of different unions, you know, the nurses union down south or doctors unions, or, you know, would the experience for them be the same? Is that there seems to be a much more sympathetic ear to unions in the south?
Well, the Irish Congress trade unions were affiliated to it, so we all work together, and the idea of collective bargaining is very important. And we are trying to encourage with representations here in the north. So we would have been, in history, the INTO was a lot larger, but unfortunately, when things parted company, the INTO lost representatives from other parts, so then the UTU was formed. And there's great debate over that because they got the chain and we didn't get the chain. So when we do collective events, we do share. So the idea is that when we're all there, all trade unions see no barrier of religion, see no barrier of nationality. It's about the worker. So there's no barrier. And I think, and we talked about that throughout all issues in the north here, the trade unions were never politicised. They were always the one organisation that supported the worker. And it doesn't matter what the worker was going through, the trade union was there to support it.
It's interesting you say that, because I'm part of, I suppose, the medical trade union as well. And I mean, my experience is very much that as well, is that you know, you're not treated with any real significant respect, and you're seen nearly as a disruptor. You know, so it's interesting that your experience down south is different. Yeah. Just with regards to education, anybody, any points to make? Anybody want to ask any questions? This young man over here.
Just a question for Siobhan, because I know you're in education. I just want to know your opinion on integrated schools. I grew up in actually Lurgan, County Armagh. I grew up in a Catholic primary school, Catholic secondary school. All my sports were integrated. You know, I played golf, swimming. I also played GAA. Come from a big GAA family, but I would have, you know, because of swimming and golf, been friends and with a lot of Protestants. I work in a leisure centre in Craigavon as well. I've grown up with a lot of Protestants, you know, around me. The talk doesn't scare anyone in university, but what I find now in university is that without trying, all my friends naturally are Catholics. I don't know if that has anything to do with it, you know, with the integrated schools. I think that must be part of it because, like I said, I did grow up with both sides of the community, and I'm just curious of your opinion on integrated schools, if that would. I think that's something that would be necessary, you know, for unionists up here, for United Ireland, and I'm just curious of your opinion.
I actually see education as being more integrated than we take. Schools don't necessarily always need a label of integrated status or controlled, maintained, voluntary grammar. I know it is costly with our education system having so many mixes, but currently I think an awful lot of our schools are actually integrated because having taught, and I have taught most in the maintained sector, within my classes, and nobody would know that there are children of different faiths in it. That whole mix has happened a lot easier. I have had taught, it was quite ironic one year when I was teaching in Derry, GCSE RE, and a non-Catholic child actually performed one of the top performers. So to me, the schools are actually integrating naturally. And I think if we're allowing this to evolve, and I know within any sector that we have to allow that, and we have to do an awful lot of shared education, which actually paves the way for natural integration, because it's very difficult for people to jump and take away their common identity at the minute. So allowing the current system of shared education projects, the funding that is there, which is good and has been used very effectively. I also see that in the south they would have educate together schools which are similar to integrated, again taking away the faith element from schools. Schools is a place for education, but we need to allow natural integration happening instead of changing the labels, because I think here at the minute in the north we're too fond of labels and just strip the label and just see the person and educate the child in that there.
Any other questions on education? This gentleman up here, just.
Sorry, it was just on the same point. I suppose just you had said at the start there in terms of, you know, ending the segregation education, and it was sort of on the back of the other point there. In terms of the model, I suppose, going forward and that sort of transition towards breaking down that sort of division in schools, what's your own view in the Stroul campus in terms of an actual model? Because that's a campus that will have 4 or 5 different schools in the one site. And is that almost a better way forward as opposed to just assuming people would choose integrated education? I mean, even think from my own point of view, like Marfelt, for instance, we have 4 or 5 different schools, all in a relatively small town. Is something like Stroul a model forward for other towns to actually have all their schools in one site and bring students together? Thank you.
Before we maybe get that answer, we'll maybe get the question from this gentleman here as well, and we'll do a couple of questions together.
And thanks to the panel for all. And I have to be very conscious because I'm sitting beside a teacher about what I say. I do feel that the environment needs to be part of the education system. It needs to be something that's taught. It needs to be something similar to history. The environment needs to be a subject. And it has been mentioned now a couple of times here tonight, Lough Neagh. I am a commercial Lough Neagh fisherman, so Lough Neagh is something that's really within my heart. And I'm just thinking overall that it's the one big thing on the island of Ireland that knows no religion whatsoever. It doesn't recognise boundaries or borders, even though part of it, the water that runs into Lough Neagh formed part of the border at one point. And even with all of that, at the time of the Good Friday Agreement, which has been mentioned here a couple of times as well, Lough Neagh never got a look in at all, never was mentioned within it at all. So I think going forward, by way of a United Ireland, Lough Neagh needs to be at the centre of that in some way or another, at least. And definitely by way of education, I think we need it on it needs to be a hot topic whenever it comes to our young people, because the reasons why Lough Neagh is in the state that it's in today is, and I do believe is because of the lack of education by way of overall environment.
Okay.
Look.
That's great. Thank you. There's just one more, Cora, just over here.
I guess this is kind of a different dynamic, more of a statement plus question. So I was ministerial appointment in Ireland for the European Artificial Intelligence Advisory Board. So I've been working in AI for probably 20 years and patented inventor. I also co-wrote the first Masters in Ireland, that's in UL. And just speaking to an engineering perspective, there's a really good aeronautical engineering course in UL, and most of the people that come out of that course are shipped into different parts of Europe. But I was always thinking that there's an opportunity around merging the opportunity from an artificial intelligence perspective and big tech. So I think from a United Ireland perspective, I think the North has been, starved for so long from the opportunity of FDI. You've got all of this opportunity in the South, and it's been shipped to Europe. And there's a new nascent technology that's coming down the track, which is quantum engineering, quantum computing. I'm on the Quantum Industry Advisory Board since 2014. I've drafted the first pathway to Masters that's heading into Europe. And all of the conversations in those rooms are ship it to the US, ship it to Europe. So I think a big opportunity that I see from a United Ireland perspective is cross-pollination with Derry, Belfast, getting the technology-centred universities merging together. And I'm just wondering if that's something that people are kind of even thinking about or interested in.
Okay. So I suppose there's 3 things there, Siobhan. One is that I suppose evidence that we're lagging behind a little bit in the north, and that the industries down south are different to ours. They're maybe more evolved than ours, things like artificial intelligence. But the 2 big questions, I suppose, one was your view on Stroul, and that as a format. And then the second one was, is there a role for more environment education in schools?
Firstly, Stroul is lagging behind. It's like everything here in the north due to lack of investment. It was a great plan. It should have happened. I would love to see Stroul operationally. To me, it has the potential to achieve a lot. Everybody, it's like, I suppose, it's one of the most dynamic projects. But again, it's like everything is delay upon delay. I drove past it a number of years ago and I couldn't believe how little development. Maybe with this most recent appointment, we'll leave it there. Maybe they can manage magic money And maybe that will be the coordination that will take to get there, because I do think it would be a stepping stone to integration. You referenced the Marfelt, area, Lawrence, earlier on. Marfelt has a really good, unique learning partnership, like all the schools actually work. Doesn't matter, they don't see the uniform, they work together because it's more cost effective. When I taught in Derry for 20 years, the foil learning community, all the schools work together. So kids from different schools would be going and studying A-levels. If they want to go psychology, they might have had to go to Lisneal, or if they wanted to do maybe ICT, they would have went to maybe St Columns. It didn't matter because they floated around. That was part of my role, was evaluating it at the times. And as you're saying earlier on about the idea of lacking technology, Fujitsu set up in the north in Derry at one time, and they couldn't recruit people because the degree that they needed didn't match Fujitsu's needs, and that had to be changed. Sometimes education is not listening to employers, and you're saying like environmental studies does come on to the curriculum, but the problem being it's getting it within, and nothing matters in the north unless it's an exam. And that's bottom line. I think it's one of the things I've said recently. We need to stop teaching to exam stand and data. Children are more important, and they are their future. And we here are driven by statistics, but yet and all, when you share our statistics in comparison to the north, or in the south, we're lagging behind. So I think education has to listen more, and the people in the big house, maybe those key players, need to be pushing it on to the Department of Education. And education is too slow evolving. AI and all of this, God knows what's going to be coming down the line, because I'm encouraging children not to be afraid of AI. I'm encouraging teachers not to be afraid of AI. It is a very good tool if used effectively. It is not to be the only tool to be used, but just in conjunction with everything else. So to sum it up, I would say education just needs to be moved with the times, and don't be afraid of change, because I think that's what we're afraid of here in the north. We're afraid of change, and I think we need to be taking that leap ahead and seeing that change can be very, very positive. I've seen the changes here. I'm just hoping for more. I think I'll leave the Loughney question to Seamus.
Loughney, I would have thought we'll need Europe to sort out Loughney and our only route to Europe.
So we need resource, we need money. We need money and resource.
Yeah, certainly not going to come from the UK government. And as I say, we're too small of an economy to put it on our own. It's going to be a big job, and farmers need to take a bit of responsibility for it. But it's very, farmers is a low-lying fruit. They're very easy blamed. There's more contributing to the problems of Loughney than farming. But it would.
So we have about 15 minutes left, and there are so many topics that we haven't touched on at all. So we're going to open it up to the floor, and there's lots of topics from health to policing to culture, identity. If you have a question, if you have a comment, if you have anything to put your hand up, we'll try and get around as many as we can.
Hello, I don't think you can see me there, Lawrence, but anyway, just to say I grew up in Bellaghy, but after college moved to Dublin, worked in Dublin for 25 years, and interesting experience. I'm back, obviously, living in Bellaghy for some time, but one of the things you mentioned there that I always notice when comparing north to south, especially with radio broadcasts, is the different health services. And my experience was it seems to be a certain fear of what's in the north as what it's used as a tool to beat the south, that if you're ever sick, God help you, you have to pay through the nose. But when first day I went to work, and the personnel department, they was in the financial services, but all their questions, one of the first things they asked me was, which health insurance company do you want to go with? It wasn't, do you want health insurance? Because there was a good tax incentive to take out health insurance. Now, there's obviously different plans and different things, but that's something probably the North is going to have to embrace. I see going forward is encouraging health insurance, because I think the National Health Service has a difficulty in sustaining the expenses. So it may not be some political parties' policies, but it's probably needed.
We could probably spend 2 hours talking specifically about health. I thought I was going to get away with talking about it. I'm going to try. Anybody else want to speak about health particularly? Okay. Obviously, it's a burning issue. It's probably the main thing at the moment that's causing us all pain. This gentleman up at the back, nobody else. He's spoken before, but we're happy to take him if he wants. And this lady here. This lady here at the front. After.
The waiting lists alone. Bad enough trying to see a doctor, but try to see a consultant, and you're kept on a waiting list could be as much as 2 years to 5 years, and you don't know when you're ever going to get called. And what angers me, you could have cancer and you wouldn't realise it.
Yeah, look, I see it day and daily. That's my brother John, who's a local GP as well. I hope he's not going to say anything too controversial. This lady here, sorry, was first, I think. And
Mike Nesbitt was mentioning about trying to encourage people to see consultants straight away, even if they have to travel somewhere.
He did. So just this lady down at the front here.
I can't see any other, Lawrence, but I have 2 issues just with the health service. As a nurse for 22 years, I've worked in the Craigavon Area Hospital, I've worked in the Western Trust, and I've now worked in the Northern Trust. The morale within health service is completely at an all-time low within the NHS. And I have friends in the south, and they're not feeling the same way as us. So there has to be some sort of a partnership. The time of the north-south intervention for, like say, for example, hip replacements and knee replacements, that was such a good initiative because the patients were being seen. We weren't fighting trying to get these patients seen too because they were down the road, they paid for the operations, they came back up the road and they got their money reimbursed. So that was the first thing. Second of all is how are we going to retain our nurses and doctors here? The amount of student nurses coming through now and they're saying to us, oh sure, we'll get our training and then we'll go to Australia. And that's exactly what they're doing. They're not even staying. They used to say, we'll stay for a year or 2 and get our experience. They're not even doing that now. Medical students are exact same. The amount of medical doctors that have left this country and went to Australia, it's shocking. And we're losing these people. And if we had built a joint health service, I don't think we would lose as many.
Yeah, that's great, thank you. And then this gentleman here with the glasses.
Thanks, Lawrence. Get you tomorrow. I'm John Diamond. I'm one of the local GPs with Lawrence and Lawrence's brother, so I'll have to declare that interest. Just an answer to Pat's question. NHS is broken here, beyond repair, okay? The private health genie is out of the bottle, okay? You only have to drive up the roundabout every 6 months. The signage is getting bigger every time you go there, okay? So private practice is there, and it just wants to get bigger, and it's going to eat everything else around it, okay? There's 3 types of patients in Northern Ireland now. There's those who have loads of money, who can pay for it. There's the ones who have insurance, and then there's just everybody else, okay? And most of us fit into the everybody else category. If you don't have insurance, get it. As a GP who's been working for 25 years, it is screwed, okay? Every day of the week, I have patients coming in, and I'm telling them, yeah, I'll refer you off. You're going to be seen in 7, 8 years, and that's the truth. And I have wee old ladies who are in the twilight of their lives, who have grandchildren they want to play with, who need new hips. They'll die never having had their hips done. They're having to beg, steal and borrow from family to pay for something that they should be getting for free. So if you think that this place, that the NHS is the golden cow that we hang on to that prevents us from changing for something better, you're deluded. It's gone. It's broken. And Philip's sitting beside me here, who's chair of the health committee. But it's broken. I'm sorry. It just is. And it's irreparably damaged. I cannot see anywhere where it's going to be fixed. As the lady down there said, our youngsters are all getting trained. And if you're living in Newry or you're living in Derry, why would you not take 10 minutes across the border, earn double the money for half the work? It's as simple as that. Ben and Ruth, Ben Glancy used to work here and work till he was 67, 68 years of age. My vintage are not going to do that. It just morally chips away at you every day. None of us will ever plead poverty about what we're earning. It's the moral injury that you get every day with trying to deal with people who you cannot fix, and you know that you're going to be seeing them for over and over and over and over for years. So for healthcare alone, something has to be done, and I think the only solution is some sort of all-island solution. I don't know what that looks like, whether that's launch care or whatever. I don't know what that looks like, but it's a conversation we need to have.
Anybody else? For what it's worth, I tried my best, I suppose, to remain neutral tonight, but I would very much echo everything that John has just said. It's beyond fixing. It has reached a tipping point that I just think it's past the point of no return, and I think the only thing that saves the health service in Northern Ireland is an all-island health service. I'm not going to say any more than that. We're down to the last few minutes, so I want to go back to all of our panel members. Just one very kind of simple question, and I want, if we can, brief answers because we are in the last few minutes. Ola, what do you see the future as? How do you visualise the future?
I can see definitely more conversations and more people open to if not united, then definitely shared islands and more shared projects. So sometimes, as Siobhan says, it's not the label that matters, but actually the work behind the scenes. So as the same way as schools are becoming integrated without the label, I think the island of Ireland might become united without necessarily the label or way before the label is attached to it. And I really do hope that there is place there for everybody who decides to make it their home.
Thank you. Siobhan, how do you see the future?
I do think at the minute the change in conversation everywhere, because people are, as you alluded to in the health service, people are exhausted. In education, people are fighting to get children a statement. They're only allowed 2 per year, 2 visits from the education psychologists. They're non-existent. And everybody here is just shattered and exhausted. We need change. I think we need change for our own mental and physical health and everything coming across it. So I do think there will be a change. I think people who never, ever were having those conversations with me, day in, day out, or people are asking, we need change. The change would be if this country changed. And it's amazing how many people want that change. And I think with looking at everything, there's a silent majority who are afraid to come out and admit. But when you would give them a ballot paper, and hopefully everybody who lives here would be allowed that, conversation, and that is a right that they need to have. And I think with educating and showing people that there is a brighter future out there and our children deserve it, and I hope I see it.
Tony, it's the same question.
How do I follow that? No, as it's been mentioned earlier, and I'll go back to my own work again, and the integrated sector has been mentioned by a few people here involved tonight, and I had forgot to say that's another area. The OSJ, we're running integrated schools competitions. Schools that are not able to compete in the colleges level, whether it's A, B, C, or D, or E, and we get these schools in, and we run first year and maybe fourth year blitzes annually, and you get schools from, I'm telling you, you'd be surprised, audience, that's taking part. So I agree with the rest of the panelists here. Times are changing. The young ones, the barriers are going down, and the young ones want a bright future. And it's a new Ireland. It's absolutely a new Ireland, and I think you're going to get all divides. It will happen.
Well, it's certainly going to happen. I don't think it's going to happen all that soon, but we're needing a lot more discussions like this. It can't happen like the way Brexit happened, that we voted for something we didn't know what we were voting for, or not we will know what we're voting for, but a lot of our population doesn't. So there need to be more discussions like that, and cross-community discussions, and like a lot of subjects was touched here tonight. The health, take health for example, it seems the biggest one. I'm not an expert in it, but just watching news reports through COVID there's a representative from that medical council, the British Medical Council, I think he's from there. Every time he's on, he's mentioned that we need to be heading towards the southern model. Health's very important, and then the economy. The gentleman there spoke about the AI and the technology. Like some of the biggest companies in the world is operating in the south, which would bring you on to education. They just didn't come for the tax breaks. They come because the southern education was second to none. They knew the school leavers was very trainable and very well educated, and that's our education system's broken, and our health system's broken, and our agricultural industry hanging on by the nails. So it's going to happen, and it may not just happen overnight.
Thank you, Seamus. I suppose we have run out of time. Forgive me for running a minute or two over. I suppose the last thing for me is to bring a formal close to tonight's event. I just want to say thank you very much to the panel members. Thank you. Thank you very much to our First Minister, Michelle, and thank you very much to Cathal. We covered a lot of stuff. We covered a lot of stuff tonight, but we really only scratched the surface. There's so much more that we could have got into that we didn't. I suppose the one thing maybe that we did potentially learn is that it's complex. You know, that this isn't binary, this isn't black or white. There aren't really simple answers to a lot of these things, and they have to really be thought out. What's also probably clear is that reunification, if it happens, is so much more than just changing a map or a flag. It affects jobs, it affects education, it affects the people living here, it affects livelihoods and so much more. And I suppose if Brexit taught us anything, as Seamus said there at the very end, rushing into a big constitutional change without any proper roadmap is probably going to cause difficulties. And that's why debates like tonight are so important. And not everybody agrees in the future, and that's okay. What's really important is that we talk about it, that we listen to each other, we listen to all perspectives, and that we continue to plan. And we need to make sure that all voices are heard. Tonight, obviously, Ola brings a different perspective, but there are other demographics, like Brady said, you know, those who have maybe disabilities that all need to be part of it. And equally, whenever we're discussing it, we have to be thinking about those who are for it, those who are against it, and those who lie somewhere in the middle as well. What is becoming more and more obvious when you look at the demographics, when you look at all the polls, is that at some stage in the future, we will very definitely get a vote on this, you know, and it's up to us then to decide what sort of future we really want. It's up to both sides of the debate, those who want the status quo and those who want to advocate for a new Ireland. It's up to those to really win the hearts and minds of the persuadables. It just leaves me then to thank you guys, the audience, for you know, conversations like this are really only a benefit if people engage with them. So thank you very much for engaging with them, and it's great to have so many people here. And with that, I'd like to just officially bring tonight's proceedings to a close. Thanks again to all the panellists, thanks to you, thanks to the Seamus Heaney Centre as well. Have a great evening, everybody, and a very safe journey home.